$78. That is all Rowan Bennett has left in the world on the night everything changes. The number sits in her mind like a stone as her beat-up delivery scooter cuts through the frozen streets of Boston's North End. The engine rattles with every pothole, the seat cracked vinyl that splits her jeans in 3 places, and the headlight flickers like it is dying, like everything she owns is dying. Her hands are numb inside dollar store gloves. Her feet are 2 blocks of ice inside sneakers held together with duct tape and prayer. But she does not stop moving because stopping means going home to that apartment on Mercer Street, and home means the mailbox, and the mailbox means the letter. The red-stamped letter that arrived yesterday morning at 9:33 a.m. She remembers the exact time because she was counting her tips from the overnight shift at Mel's Diner. $17 in quarters. $3 in dimes. A handful of pennies that fell across her kitchen table like metal tears. The knock came while she was still tallying. Firm. Official. The kind of knock that meant nothing good lived on the other side of the door. The debt collector had a face like a calculator. No emotion, just numbers. He held out the letter in fingers that smelled like cigarette smoke and cruelty. His voice was the sound of a door slamming shut. Foreclosure notice. $200,000 settlement. 7 days to produce payment or lose everything. 7 days. That was 17 hours ago. She has not slept. She has not eaten. She just worked 2 delivery shifts, 14 hours total, her scooter weaving through sleet and black ice, collecting tips that would not fill a vending machine. $78 to her name. 0 chance of survival. The scooter slows as she approaches Bella Not, an upscale Italian restaurant that gleams like a jewel in the frozen darkness. Crystal windows, warm light spilling onto sidewalks where men in wool coats stand smoking cigarettes that cost more than her lunch. She has a delivery to make here. One last order before her shift ends. The restaurant's private entrance faces the narrow brick alley, and she is angling the scooter toward it when she sees them. 3 men. Dark coats that fit like skin. Hands positioned in that particular way that means weapons underneath. They have cornered a teenager against the brick wall. The boy may be 16, maybe younger, his face the color of old paper. He is shaking so hard his teeth chatter loud enough for Rowan to hear from 20 feet away. Please, the boy is saying. His voice cracks like breaking glass. Please, I do not have it. I do not have the money. My mom is sick, and I could not. One of the men laughs. Not a real laugh. A sound like something breaking. He reaches toward his waistband where something dark metal catches the starlight. Rowan does not think. Her body simply moves, like she is not attached to her own mind anymore. The scooter engine cuts out. She is running. Her numb feet find purchase on the icy pavement. She plants herself between the boy and the men, her arms spread wide like she is big enough to matter. Like her 128 pounds can stop a bullet. Leave him alone, she says. Her voice is steady. It surprises her. It surprises them. The 3 men exchange looks. One steps forward, and Rowan's heart stops beating for a moment, just stops, like an engine cutting out on the highway. But then something shifts in the frozen air. Something in the way the men's shoulders tense, the way they suddenly glance toward the restaurant's frosted window as if they have felt something watching from inside. They do not move again. They simply back away, unhurried, professional, melting into the darkness like smoke dispersing. Within 30 seconds, the alley is empty except for Rowan and the boy, both of them breathing hard, their breath mingling in white clouds under the sharp winter stars. Inside the restaurant, in a private booth at the back where the light is dimmed and the sound is muted behind mahogany and stone, Nicholas Moretti sits very still. His wine glass is halfway to his lips. Cashmere coat draped across the chair beside him. Rings catching the amber glow of the table lamp. A man of 48 years who carries his power like a physical weight, the kind of man who makes other men step sideways without being asked. His dark eyes are fixed on the frosted window where, moments before, a girl he has never seen moved between a terrified boy and a bullet. Carlo leans forward from across the table. Expensive suit, grey at the temples, the look of a man who has made difficult decisions. His voice is careful. The boy belongs to the DeLuca family. The message was supposed to be. I know what the message was supposed to be, Nicholas says. His voice is deep and solid like an oath sworn in a cathedral. He does not look away from the window. Tell them it has been delivered. Enzo, seated to his right, exchanges a glance with Carlo. A look that passes between men who have known each other for 20 years, who have survived things that should have killed them. In all the time they have worked for Nicholas Moretti, never once has he stopped a collection in progress. Never once has he interfered with business. Never once has he watched anyone with the kind of attention he is showing this moment, this window, this nobody delivery girl who stepped in front of danger like she did not understand what danger was. Boss, Enzo says carefully. The men will want to know if this changes anything about the arrangement. Nicholas finally lowers his wine glass. He sets it down on the table with a soft click. Outside, Rowan is helping the boy to his feet, her hand on his shoulder, saying something too quiet to hear through the glass. The boy's face is streaked with tears. He is talking rapidly, words tumbling out like stones falling down a hill. Rowan listens. She does not tell him to be quiet. She does not tell him it is not her problem. She just listens, and when he stops talking, she tells him to go home. Nothing changes about the arrangement, Nicholas says finally. But have someone follow her. I want to know everything. Where she lives. Where she works. Who she is. And Carlo, send an amount to cover whatever the boy owes. Make it look like the DeLuca family reconsidered. Carlo nods, but his expression is confused. This is not the man he has known for 3 decades. The man he has known does not give second chances. The man he has known does not reconsider. The man he has known is a blade wrapped in ice, and blades do not bend toward mercy. But something in Nicholas's eyes has shifted. Something that was sealed shut 10 years ago, when another boy stopped breathing and a nursery upstairs in his mansion froze in time and his heart went quiet in a way that no amount of power or money could fix. Something that just cracked open like glass under pressure. Across the alley, Rowan watches the boy disappear around the corner. The cold finds her bones again now that the adrenaline is fading. Her hands are shaking for real this time. She has just done something incredibly stupid or incredibly brave, and she cannot yet tell which. The only thing she knows is that her scooter is still idling, her delivery is still waiting, and she has $78 between her and the street. She picks up the food container from the basket, the one meant for the private booth in the back. Through the restaurant's window, she can see the silhouettes of 3 men. One of them is very tall, very still, and even from this distance and through frosted glass, she feels his attention like weight. She has no idea that the man watching from the shadows has been dead inside for 10 years. She has no idea that her courage just cracked something open that was meant to stay sealed. She has no idea that in the next 7 days, everything she thought was impossible is about to become inevitable. She takes the delivery box and walks toward the restaurant's door. The brass handle is cold enough to burn. The brass handle is cold enough to burn her palm. Rowan pushes through the door of Bellinot, and the warmth hits her like a wall. Heat. Actual heat. Not the pathetic clanking radiator in her studio apartment that produces more sound than comfort, but real warmth that makes her fingers ache as the blood returns. Steam rises from the kitchen. The smell of garlic and olive oil and rosemary fills the air so completely that for one moment, she forgets she is hungry. She is always hungry now. The restaurant is quiet at this hour. Nearly midnight on a Tuesday. The private booth in the back is occupied, 3 men in charcoal suits, the kind that probably cost more than her monthly rent. She does not look at them directly. She has learned not to. Looking directly at powerful men is dangerous. Her left eye still throbs where Douglas's knuckles connected 3 days ago, the purple bloom fading to yellow-green at the edges, still angry enough that she has to tilt her head to see clearly. The hostess, a woman named Sophia who has worked here for 4 years and has never once made eye contact with Rowan, takes the delivery box. Private booth. Leave it on the sideboard. Do not interrupt. Rowan nods and moves deeper into the restaurant, her wet coat dripping onto the black and white checkered tile. No one tells her to stop dripping. No one tells her anything. She is invisible. This is usually safe. Tonight, invisibility feels like the only armor she has left. She sets the food down on the mahogany sideboard in the private booth alcove, careful not to look at the men. Their conversation stops anyway. She feels it stop. Feels the weight of their attention like pressure behind her eyes, but she keeps her head down, keeps moving, keeps breathing. The booth is separated from the main restaurant by a heavy velvet curtain. She can see through the gap, the way light catches on the edge of a face, the glint of a gold watch. One of the men is very tall. Very still. She turns to leave. The words come from behind the velvet curtain, spoken in a voice so deep it seems to come from the floor itself. You are the delivery girl. Not a question. A statement. The kind of statement that does not require an answer, so she does not give one. She keeps walking. Stop. Rowan stops. Her hand is shaking as she turns back. The velvet curtain is heavy. She can see almost nothing. Almost nothing is sometimes worse than seeing everything. Yes, she says. Her voice comes out small. Careful. The voice of someone who has learned to take up as little space as possible. I just delivered your order. The curtain does not pull back. The man does not emerge. But his voice comes again, and there is something in it, a roughness, like something rusted opening for the first time in years. What is your name? She should lie. There is something in the air of this room that tells her lying would be safer. But she is tired of lying. She is tired of most things. Rowan. Rowan, he repeats, and the word sounds different when he says it. Heavier. Like something meant to be remembered. Do you always put yourself between dangerous men and frightened boys, Rowan? Her stomach drops. She did not see his face. She was not certain he saw hers. But he was there. In the alley. Watching from the shadows while she stood between those men and the teenager, while her voice came out steady even though her hands were shaking, while something older than fear moved through her chest and made her brave in the way that only people with nothing to lose can be brave. I don't know what you mean, she says, but her voice cracks. No. He sounds amused, but not in a way that is funny. The boy you saved. His name is Tommy. He was running from men who wanted to hurt him. Men who work for a man named Douglas Hale. Do you know Douglas Hale, Rowan? Every nerve in her body goes still. Very still. Like a rabbit that has just heard the safety click of a rifle's hammer being drawn back. I need to go. I have other deliveries. She does not have other deliveries. She has $5 left for gas and one more pickup after this, and the tip will probably be $2 if she is lucky, because luck is something that happens to other people, the kind of people whose fathers didn't die when they were 9, whose mothers didn't die from medical bills that the insurance company decided were pre-existing conditions, whose ex-boyfriends don't show up with gifts wrapped in dead birds. The money in your coat pocket, he says. How much is it? She does not answer. She does not want to answer. The question feels like a knife. $78, he continues, as if she had spoken. And you need it gone. All of it. For the man you live with. For the man who leaves gifts on your doorstep and marks your throat and tells you he loves you in a voice that sounds like breaking glass. That Douglas Hale. Her hand goes to her neck instinctively. The bruises are there. They are always there. How do you know that? The velvet curtain pulls back. The man who emerges is tall enough that he has to angle his shoulders through the gap. His suit is charcoal gray, cut so precisely it looks like it might be part of his body. His white shirt is open at the collar, showing the broad curve of his chest. A scar runs from the outer corner of his left eye to his cheekbone, old enough to be pale against his olive skin. His hair is dark, combed back from his forehead, silvered at the temples. His eyes are storm gray. Not warm. Not cruel, exactly, but very still. The eyes of someone who has not felt anything in a very long time. He is Nicholas Moretti. She does not know his name yet, but she feels his weight in the room the way you feel a storm forming. Because, he says, and each word is distinct, separated, deliberate, I had my people look into what happened in that alley. And I learned that you are the kind of woman who stands between predators and prey. And I learned that your predator's name is Douglas Hale. And I learned about the letter in your apartment. The one on your kitchen table. The one that says final notice in red letters. $200,000. 7 days. The room spins slightly. She reaches for the edge of the sideboard. That is not your concern, she says. No, he agrees. It is not. He turns to walk back to the booth. She is dismissed. She can go. She should go. But then he stops, and without looking at her, he speaks once more. You did something brave in that alley. Something that should have made you invisible forever, because brave people die, Rowan, and no one remembers they ever lived. But you did not die. You stood there. And you did not move. And in all my years of watching broken men and broken things, I have never seen anything like that. He pauses. The silver-haired man at the table, Carlo, shifts uncomfortably. My driver will be outside this restaurant in 15 minutes. Black car. License plate November Mike 271. Get in it. Come with me. And I will make sure that Douglas Hale understands that you are no longer his concern. I don't even know you, she whispers. No, he says. You do not. He returns to the booth, and the curtain falls closed. Rowan stands alone on the black and white checkered tile. Her hand is still on her neck, covering bruises that have stopped trying to fade. The clock on the wall reads 11:51 p.m. In a few minutes, her shift ends. In a few minutes, a black car with license plate November Mike 271 will pull outside this restaurant. She has $78 in her coat pocket. She has a debt collector's letter that comes due in 7 days. She has a man who leaves gifts wrapped in dead birds. She has nothing to lose. She takes off her coat. Outside, the November wind tears through the empty Boston streets like a blade wrapped in ice, and the scooter sits abandoned by the curb, its engine ticking as it cools, its delivery light still glowing in the darkness. Inside the mansion on Commonwealth Avenue, in a room with a brass nameplate that reads Noah, dust settles on the wooden railings of a crib that has been empty for 10 years. And in the private booth at Bellinot, Nicholas Moretti sits motionless, his storm-grey eyes fixed on the gap in the velvet curtain where Rowan's silhouette briefly appeared, and something shifts in his chest, something old and terrible and dangerous, and he reaches for his phone. Carlo leans forward. The girl. What are we doing about her? Nicholas does not answer immediately. He is thinking about the nursery upstairs. He is thinking about a name he has not spoken aloud since a doctor placed a small, still body in his arms and said there was nothing more they could do. He is thinking about 10 years of silence. 10 years of cold. 10 years of being a blade wrapped in ice. We are saving her, he finally says. And she is going to change everything. The footsteps on the tile of the restaurant floor fade as Rowan walks toward the door. The bell chimes as she pushes through. And somewhere in the Massachusetts winter, a black car with license plate November Mike 271 turns its engine on and begins to move. The frost crunches under Rowan's boots as she stands motionless, her body a shield between the teenager and 3 men in suits that cost more than everything she owned. Vincent's hand rises. His knuckles are scarred, his smile cruel. Who the hell are you? His voice cuts through the November air like a blade wrapped in ice. Rowan's hands are trembling so violently she has to clasp them together to hide it. Her left eye is swollen shut from Douglas's fist 3 days ago. The bruises on her throat, handprints unmistakable, are barely hidden under her coat collar. But she does not move. She does not step aside. Someone who's not going to watch you hurt a kid, she says. Her voice shakes like a candle in the wind, but it does not break. Tommy, the teenager, is 17 years old with acne scarring his jawline and terror flooding his eyes. He owes them $800 on a stupid bet. A bet he lost to men who collect debts the way other men collect art, with precision, with pleasure, with no mercy. Marco laughs. It is not a warm sound. It is the laugh of a man who has hurt people before and enjoyed it. Lady, you got a death wish? Because that's what you're looking at right now. The restaurant door behind them stands closed, its frosted glass glowing warm with candlelight and expensive warmth. Inside, the clinking of wine glasses continues. No one knows what is happening in the alley. No one cares. Rowan's left side screams with pain, her ribs are either cracked or severely bruised. She has not seen a doctor because doctors cost money and she has $78 in her coat pocket and a debt collector's letter that came due 4 days ago. But she plants her feet firmer against the brick wall. Let him go. Vincent moves like a man accustomed to obedience. His hand swings toward her shoulder to shove her aside. His expression is already calculating where she will fall, how hard the concrete will hurt. Then the restaurant door opens. The man who emerges is tall. 6 feet 2 inches, broad-shouldered, wearing a charcoal suit that costs more than a year of Rowan's old rent. His dark hair is perfectly maintained. There is a thin scar running from the corner of his left eye to his cheekbone, pale against his olive skin. His eyes are storm gray. Empty. The kind of empty that comes from seeing horrors and becoming one yourself. His name is Nicholas Moretti. He is 38 years old. He owns 17 restaurants across Boston. He owns considerably more that the police do not discuss in public. He steps onto the frost-covered pavement and says one word. Enough. The word lands like a gunshot in the silence. Vincent's hand freezes mid-motion. His face goes gray. Marco takes a step backward without meaning to. Paul, the third enforcer, is already reaching for his phone to call someone higher up the chain, searching for an explanation that will save his life. Mr. Moretti, Vincent stammers. His voice has transformed from cruelty to desperate appeasement in the space of a heartbeat. We didn't know you we were just collecting on a debt, nothing serious, we didn't see you, sir, we would never have. The boy's debt is paid, Nicholas says. His voice is deep and solid like an oath. Like thunder rolling across a frozen landscape. Leave. They scatter. Not run, because running shows panic. But they move with speed, with purpose, their forms disappearing into the Boston night like rats abandoning a sinking ship. Their footsteps echo once against the brick walls and then vanish. Tommy does not say thank you. He simply runs in the opposite direction, his sneakers splashing through a puddle of slush, his gasping breath the only sound besides the wind. Then there is silence. Rowan turns to face Nicholas Moretti for the first time. Up close, he is even more imposing. His hands are large, his fingers adorned with 2 silver rings and a watch that costs more than her mother's funeral. She can smell his cologne, something expensive, something that speaks of a world she has never inhabited. His storm grey eyes study her face with the intensity of a general surveying a battlefield. She whispers, "Thank you." He does not respond immediately. Instead, he looks at her left eye, swollen purple and yellow. He looks at the bruises on her throat, the handprint shapes barely concealed by her coat. He looks at the way she is favoring her left side, the small winces that escape when she breathes too deeply. "Who did that to you?" His voice is quiet. It is more dangerous than when he spoke to Vincent. Rowan pulls her coat tighter. "Nobody. It's fine." "Really?" "It's... Who?" One word. No inflection. Just absolute certainty that he will get an answer. She flinches. Her voice becomes barely audible. "My ex-Douglas. But he's gone now, he left town, it's handled, I just need to stay away from." "You will not need to stay away from anything," Nicholas says. "Not anymore." He does not explain what he means. He simply turns and walks back toward the restaurant, leaving her standing in the November wind with her heart thundering in her chest and no understanding of what has just changed. What Rowan does not know is that Nicholas Moretti watched her stand between armed men and a boy she had never met. What she does not know is that he saw the bruises and recognized the signature of intimate violence. What she does not know is that somewhere inside the vault of his chest, where no feeling has existed for 10 years, something cold and dangerous and utterly unstoppable has stirred awake. 3 days pass. Rowan works her deliveries on the beat-up scooter, collecting $17 in tips on a Friday night, sleeping for hours in her room above a laundromat that smells like mildew and broken dreams. Then her phone rings. The voice on the other end is professional, female, kind in a way that immediately makes Rowan suspicious. "Ms. Bennett? This is Teresa from Moretti Enterprises. Mr. Moretti would like to offer you a position." Rowan's stomach drops. "I think you have the wrong person. You're Rowan Bennett, the delivery driver for Boston Fresh Foods." The woman's tone does not change. "Mr. Moretti was impressed by your character. Your integrity. He's offering you a nanny position for his home. The compensation is $4,000 per week. Plus room and board in a private cottage on the property. Mr. Moretti would like you to come in for an interview this Friday at 2 o'clock. The address is..." Rowan hangs up. For 20 minutes, she stares at her phone. This is a scam. Has to be a scam. Nobody pays $4,000 per week for anything, let alone to a girl with a swollen eye and a debt collector hunting her. There has to be a catch. There has to be a price beyond money. But the debt collector's letter sits on her table, the red stamp reading final notice, the number demanding $200,000 in 7 days. 7 days, which is now 4 days away. She calls back. The interview is set for Friday at 2 o'clock. The address is an estate in Brookline, a neighborhood where houses sit behind wrought iron gates and the servants' quarters cost more than entire apartment buildings in her part of Boston. She buys one new shirt with money she does not have. She takes the T train across the city. The November sky is gray and threatening, pregnant with snow that has not yet fallen. The gates open automatically as her taxi pulls up to the security booth. No human guard, just a camera and a speaker and a voice that says, "Welcome, Ms. Bennett. Please proceed to the main house." The driveway spirals through manicured grounds that are dormant now but clearly stunning in other seasons. Evergreens line the path like silent sentries. The mansion emerges gradually as she turns the final curve, 3 stories of pale stone, mullioned windows reflecting the grey sky, a roofline that suggests both elegance and the kind of impenetrability that comes with serious money. She has never been in a room like the study. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlook gardens that descend in terraces toward a frozen pond. Dark wood paneling rises from marble floors. The leather chairs are the color of cognac. There is a fireplace with a marble mantel, and above it, a portrait of a woman with dark hair and kind eyes. She is no longer living in the house. The portrait is the only memory of her that remains. Nicholas stands when Rowan enters. He is wearing the same charcoal suit, fresh shirt, his scar catching the winter light. Carlo and Enzo stand by the door, their faces carefully neutral. But their eyes track Rowan with the intensity of men assessing a threat or a puzzle. "Sit, please," Nicholas says. He gestures to the chair across from his desk. Rowan perches on the edge like a bird ready to flee. "Mr. Moretti, I don't understand. You don't even have a child." The woman on the phone said Nanny, but I've never seen. "No," Nicholas says. He has been studying her face during her entire speech. "I do not have a child." Silence stretches between them like pulled taffy. Outside, a crow lands on the frozen pond and breaks the ice with its feet, searching for water beneath. "Then why?" Rowan's voice cracks slightly. "Why would you offer me a job? Why would you help me? I'm nobody. I deliver food. I live above a laundromat. I have a man who beats me and cops who won't listen and a debt I can never repay. I'm nobody." Nicholas leans back in his chair. When he speaks, his voice is quiet but carries absolute certainty. You stood between armed men and a boy you did not know. That is not nobody. That is someone with a code. That is someone I need in my life. I don't, Rowan starts. There is a cottage on the property, Nicholas continues as if she has not spoken. It is heated. The doors lock from the inside. The windows are intact. You will live there. You will manage the house during the day. You will be safe. No one will hurt you there. No one will find you there. And when you are ready, we will discuss the man who left those bruises on your throat. Rowan's hands are shaking. She clasps them in her lap. What's the catch? There's always a catch. Men don't help women for free. What do you want? I want you to be safe, Nicholas says simply. I want you to stop being terrified. And I want you to help me learn how to live in a house again instead of just surviving in it. She resists for 10 minutes of conversation, every instinct screaming that this is a trap, that there is a price hidden in the generosity, that no one ever helps anyone without expecting ownership in return. But the debt collector's letter is a noose. This is oxygen. She accepts. That night, Rowan stands alone in the guest cottage for the first time. It is small, a living area, a bedroom, a kitchen, a bathroom with actual hot water. The heat rises from baseboards and makes the air warm for the first time in 3 years. The door has a deadbolt. The windows are intact, unbroken, clean. She locks herself in the bathroom and cries until there is nothing left inside her but exhaustion. But what she does not know is that at that exact moment, for miles away in a high-rise office building, a man named Douglas Hale is sitting across from a private investigator, sliding photographs of Rowan across a desk, and saying, I want to know everywhere she goes. Everyone she talks to. Every dollar she spends. Find out who this man is. Find out what he wants from her. Because when I'm done with him, she's going to remember why she belongs to me. The investigator nods and begins making phone calls. 1 week passes. 2 weeks. The mansion becomes familiar in the way that safe places do. Rowan cleans, organizes, learns the rhythms of the household. Carlo and Enzo watch her with expression somewhere between protective and cautious. They exchange glances when Nicholas has her sit with him for dinner instead of eating in the kitchen. In 15 years, neither man has seen their boss sit beside anyone like this. Cordelia Blackwood is 42 years old, with blonde hair that costs $500 to maintain and a smile that has demolished 3 marriages and countless business deals. She is wealthy in her own right, old Boston money, charity board positions, connections that trace back to the founding families. She has been circling Nicholas for 6 years, waiting for the right moment to secure his attention, his ring, his empire. She sees Rowan for the first time at a charity gala at Bellanot, the same restaurant where it all began. Rowan is there to drop off documents Nicholas forgot. She wears a black coat that is not expensive, sensible shoes, and an expression of profound discomfort at being surrounded by people whose net worth exceeds small nations. Cordelia's eyes narrow. She finds Rowan in the lobby and extends a hand adorned with a diamond that catches light like a star. Her smile is poison-sweet. And who might you be, dear? Rowan shakes her hand briefly. I work for Mr. Moretti. How the domestic, Cordelia says. Her fingers linger a moment too long. Tell me, does he know about your little legal troubles? The debt? The restraining order that wasn't quite official because you were too afraid to make it official? The man who keeps calling your phone at 3 in the morning. Rowan goes very still. I don't, how did you? Everyone has something to hide, dear, Cordelia says. Her voice is still sweet, but now it carries an edge like a blade wrapped in silk. Some of us are simply better at hiding it. Some of us have the resources to ensure our past stays buried. And some of us... She pauses, letting her gaze travel from Rowan's feet to her face. Some of us are simply temporary. She walks away, leaving Rowan standing in the lobby with her heart thundering and ice crystallizing in her veins. What Rowan does not know is that Cordelia has already begun making phone calls. What she does not know is that a woman with wealth and connections can unearth secrets like a farmer turning soil. What she does not know is that Cordelia has hired someone to follow her, to document her movements, to build a case that will prove to Nicholas that his sudden interest in a delivery driver is a security risk, a liability, a weakness that will destroy everything he has built. 3 weeks into Rowan's employment, she finally asks about the door with the brass nameplate. Nicholas is sitting in his study, reviewing documents that Rowan does not understand. The house is quiet except for the wind against the windows and the occasional creak of old wood settling. She stands in the doorway, her hand on the frame, and says, "The room upstairs. The one that's always locked. There's a nameplate on it." Nicholas does not look up from his papers for a long moment. When he does, his storm-grey eyes are darker, like a sky before a storm. "My son," he says quietly. His name was Noah. Was. Rowan's voice becomes very small. "He lived 6 months," Nicholas continues. His hands are perfectly still on the papers, but his jaw is clenching and unclenching. He had a heart that was not quite right. The doctors tried everything. Medications, surgeries, interventions that no 6-month-old should have to endure. And still, one Tuesday morning, his heart simply stopped. I was holding him when it happened. He stopped speaking. The silence that follows is so complete that Rowan can hear the grandfather clock in the hallway marking time. "I have not changed anything in that room," Nicholas says finally. "The crib is still there. The toys. The blankets. His mother, she left 6 months after he died. She said she could not stay in a house where everything reminded her of his absence. She was right. But I could not bear to change it either." Rowan moves into the room without asking permission. She sits in the chair across from his desk. "I'm sorry," she whispers. "That was 10 years ago," Nicholas says. "I have not felt anything since. I built an empire. I acquired wealth. I made men fear my name. And I felt nothing. Until 3 weeks ago, when a delivery driver stood between armed men and a child she did not know." He finally looks at her directly. His eyes are still storm-grey, still empty in some fundamental way, but there is something moving beneath that emptiness now. Something that has been frozen for so long that it moves slowly, painfully, like blood returning to a limb that has been asleep. "And I am beginning to feel something again," he says. "I do not know if that is a mercy or a curse." Rowan does not answer. She simply sits with him in the quiet study while the winter light fades outside the windows. 1 month in, Douglas Hale appears at the security gates. The cameras capture him clearly, unshaven, frantic, his eyes wild with the particular desperation of a man losing control. He screams Rowan's name. He screams threats. He screams promises of violence so specific and detailed that the security guard immediately calls Carlo. Nicholas watches the footage from his study. He does not change expression. He simply says to Carlo, "If he comes back, handle it." Carlo and Enzo disappear for 6 hours. When they return, Douglas Hale is gone, not to prison, not arrested, simply gone, as if swallowed by the Boston winter. The private investigator he hired disappears as well. The phone calls at 3 in the morning stop. Rowan never asks how this happened. She suspects but does not ask. One evening in mid-December, Rowan is at a farmer's market in Brookline when Cordelia Blackwood appears beside her at the cheese counter. She is wearing a cashmere coat worth more than Rowan's entire wardrobe, a smile that speaks of secrets and certainty. Living in his guest house like a stray he picked up, Cordelia says quietly, "Do you really think he sees you as anything but charity? A broken thing to fix until he gets bored and moves on to the next rescue project? Men like Nicholas do not change for girls like you." Cordelia leaves her standing there with aged Gouda in her hand and doubt festering in her chest like an infection. That night, Rowan stands at her cottage window and watches the mansion across the gardens. In the upper window, in the room with the nameplate, she sees a light on. She sees a silhouette, Nicholas, standing before the crib that has been empty for 10 years. His shoulders are shaking. His hands are pressed against the wooden railings. He is crying. Rowan realizes in that moment that he is as broken as she is. That the empire, the power, the fear he inspires, none of it has fixed what was shattered inside him. That his offer of help was not about charity. It was about recognition. It was about one broken person seeing another broken person and saying, I know exactly what this feels like. Snow begins to fall against the windows. The bathroom was silent except for the sound of Rowan's breathing, shallow and broken like a bird with a shattered wing. Her face in the mirror was not her own anymore. The left side swollen and purple, her right eye ringed in black, her lips split open and crusted with blood that had dried the color of rust. She stared at this stranger wearing her skin and felt nothing. Numbness was mercy. Her hands trembled as she reached for the glass of water on the sink. It took both hands to lift it to her lips. The water tasted like copper and fear. Through the small bathroom window, she could see the garden of the Moretti mansion, frost coating every blade of grass like diamonds scattered across a corpse. Winter had come early this year. Winter always came when you were already cold inside. The attack had happened 4 hours ago. 2 in the morning. She had been sleeping in the guest house cottage when the window shattered, when his weight came through like a storm, when his hand covered her mouth and his voice whispered things that belonged in hell. Did you think you could leave me? Did you think some rich bastard would protect you? She had fought. God, she had fought. Her fist connecting with the lamp, the ceramic exploding into fragments that caught the moonlight, one piece opening his cheek from temple to jaw. He had screamed. She had run. Barefoot through the frozen grass, her nightgown torn, her blood mixing with his on the frost. The cold had burned her skin. Every breath felt like swallowing glass. Behind her, Douglas screaming her name like a curse, like a prayer, like the sound of everything she would never escape. She remembered the moment Carlo and Enzo appeared from the darkness, their footsteps urgent and heavy on the frozen ground. She remembered Carlo stepping directly into Douglas's path, and the single punch, clean, efficient, devastating, that dropped the man like a puppet with its strings cut. But what came after was what broke her completely. She had looked back toward the main house and seen him. Nicholas standing in the doorway in his black silk robe, his face carved from stone, his eyes burning like something had ignited inside him that could not be extinguished. In 15 years, Carlo had told her later, he had never seen the boss move that fast, never heard his voice drop to that register, not a shout, but something quieter and infinitely more dangerous. Call the FBI. Now. Enzo had looked confused. Boss? Nicholas had not repeated himself. His eyes had stayed on Rowan, taking in every bruise, every tear, every mark Douglas had left on her skin. And something in that gaze had shifted. The protection had transformed into something else entirely. Not charity. Not rescue. Something that looked like war. Now, sitting on the edge of the bathtub with her reflection staring back at her, Rowan understood the truth that had been hiding beneath everything. The man across the gardens was as broken as she was. More broken, perhaps. He had loved and lost his son. He had built an empire of violence and money and fear, and none of it had fixed the hole in his chest where his heart used to be. She was the same. Broken. Fractured. Held together by desperate hope and the muscle memory of survival. And somehow, impossibly, they had recognized each other. She heard footsteps in the hallway outside the bathroom. She tensed. But the knock was soft, and the voice that came through the door was Maria, Nicholas's housekeeper, her accent thick with worry. Signora, the boss, he says you should eat something. I have made soup. And there is fresh towels, clean clothes. You will feel better. Rowan opened the door. Maria was a woman in her 60s, grey-haired and round-faced, and her eyes went wide when she saw Rowan's face. A sound came out of her, not quite a gasp, not quite a prayer. She reached out and cupped Rowan's chin gently, turning her head to assess the damage. Mada Dio, she whispered. This man. This animal. He will pay for this. The boss, he will make him pay. Through the window behind Maria, Rowan could see Nicholas in the garden, his phone pressed to his ear, his jaw tight. Even from a distance, she could see the fury radiating from him like heat from a furnace. She could see him speaking rapidly, his free hand gesturing, his entire body coiled like a spring about to release. He was fighting for her. That tiny recognition, his fury on her behalf, his voice carrying her name with the weight of a promise, stopped her from disappearing into the darkness of her own mind. She took the soup from Maria and went to the window. At 6 in the morning, the world was still dark when the FBI arrived. 15 black SUVs pulled up to the financial offices of Douglas Hale in downtown Boston, their engines rumbling like thunder across the empty streets. 12 agents in tactical gear, their vests marked with white letters, moved with the precision of a well-oiled machine. Search warrants printed on official paper. Cameras from every news channel already positioned on the sidewalk, their reporters standing with microphones, waiting for the moment when justice would arrive in handcuffs. Douglas had been in his office on the 34th floor, surrounded by mahogany and ego and the belief that money could buy mercy. The agent who arrested him found him in his boxer shorts and an undershirt, his gold chain still around his neck, his hands reaching for the phone he would never be allowed to make. The agent read the charges while Douglas's face went white, then red, then something between rage and understanding. Racketeering. Money laundering. Extortion. Assault. Witness intimidation. The list went on. Who told you? Douglas screamed as they led him toward the elevator. Who the hell told you? His voice cracked on the words. His lawyers, his connections, his money, all of it suddenly useless. He had believed he was untouchable. The cops he paid off, the judges he knew by their first names, the prosecutors who owed him favors, none of it mattered anymore because someone had finally decided that his power was negotiable. The news cameras captured everything. Douglas Hale, age 47, collapsed on the sidewalk when they brought him out. His knees buckled. His hands, which had struck Rowan's face so many times, now shook violently as the agents guided him toward the black SUV. His mouth opened and closed like a fish pulled from water. Please, he kept saying. Please. There's been a mistake. There's been a terrible mistake. But there was no mistake. Nicholas Moretti had provided the FBI with financial records that went back 8 years. Surveillance footage of Douglas extracting money from 6 different women, using threats and violence and the promise that no one would believe them. Testimony from those women, women who had been silent until they learned they would not be alone. Women who had been waiting for someone to finally say, I believe you. I see what happened to you. And I am going to make sure it stops. The lead agent, a woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much suffering, read the charges one final time while Douglas wept on the frozen concrete. 40 years in federal prison. No parole. No possibility of buying his way out. Justice, Nicholas had told Rowan that morning, is not death. Death would be too quick, too easy, too merciful. Justice is watching someone who believed they were untouchable finally understand that they are not. But Cordelia Blackwood's destruction came differently. 3 days later, Nicholas sent her an invitation to dinner at Bellanot, the same restaurant where he had first seen Rowan step between a terrified teenager and 3 armed men. The same private booth in the back, the one with walls that muffled sound, the one where secrets stayed buried. Cordelia arrived at 8 in the evening, wearing a dress worth more than some people's annual salary, diamonds at her throat and wrists, her hair styled to perfection. She believed she had finally won. That Nicholas's attention, his interest, his power had turned in her direction at last. She did not know that Nicholas had already decided her fate. He was waiting in the booth when she arrived, dressed in a black suit that cost more than her monthly rent. No smile on his face. No warmth in his eyes. Just a folder on the table between them, manila and thick, stamped with a single word, confidential. Cordelia sat across from him, her hand reaching for the wine glass already waiting for her. Nicholas slid the folder across the table. His movements were measured, deliberate, like a man performing a ritual he had planned in meticulous detail. Open it, he said. His voice was quiet, which made it more terrifying. Cordelia's hand trembled as she opened the folder. Her face went pale, then grey, then a color that had no name. Inside were documents, bank statements, transfer records, email chains showing exactly how she had embezzled money from 3 separate charities. How she had funneled donations meant for homeless women and abused children into offshore accounts bearing her name. How she had maintained the appearance of wealth and charity while stealing from the most vulnerable people in Boston. "You can't," she whispered. "You can't do this. I'll destroy you. I have connections. I have lawyers. I have?" She stopped, because she saw the expression on Nicholas's face, and she understood that she had nothing he wanted. That she was not a threat. She was simply a woman who had made a terrible mistake. "You threatened someone under my protection," Nicholas said. His words fell like stones into still water. "That was unwise. The IRS received these documents this morning," he continued. "By tomorrow, every society page in Boston will run the story. Your accounts are frozen. Your properties are under investigation. The board members of those charities are currently speaking with federal prosecutors. You will face charges for wire fraud, money laundering, and theft of charitable funds. That is not my doing. That is the law." Cordelia's hand went to her throat. "You'll ruin me." "I will not ruin you," Nicholas said. "You ruined yourself the moment you decided that charity was a performance and cruelty was entertainment. You called her a stray. That word, that dismissal, was the decision point." He stood. The dinner was over. By the next morning, Cordelia Blackwood's face appeared on every news channel in New England. Not as a socialite or philanthropist, but as a criminal. A woman who had stolen from the vulnerable. A woman whose entire identity had been constructed on lies and theft. Her friends disappeared. Her invitations were rescinded. The clubs that had welcomed her for decades sent letters requesting her resignation. Her husband filed for divorce. 3 weeks later, she was arrested at her Beacon Hill townhouse by the same FBI agents who had taken Douglas Hale. The difference was that no one was filming her tears. No one cared about her breakdown. She had been seen, judged, and found wanting. Her social circle, which had sustained her entire sense of self, had evaporated like morning mist. Both villains destroyed. Not through death or violence, but through the systematic dismantling of everything they believed made them powerful. Their money meant nothing. Their connections meant nothing. Their lies, finally exposed to the light, meant nothing at all. And in the guest house cottage of the Moretti mansion, Rowan Bennett sat by the window and watched the winter sky begin to clear. The winter sky above Boston began to break apart, clouds shifting like a door opening slowly to let the light through. 2 weeks had passed since the federal agents came at dawn, since Douglas Hale was led away in handcuffs, since Cordelia Blackwood's empire of cruelty collapsed into headlines and court dates. 2 weeks of silence in the Moretti mansion, of Rowan moving through rooms that were no longer her workplace but something more fragile, a space between what was and what might be. She found him on an evening when the sun turned the snow gold. The nursery door was open. The first time in 10 years, Carlo had told her quietly, his voice carrying the weight of a miracle. Nicholas sat in the rocking chair, the one painted pale blue, holding a stuffed giraffe with button eyes. The crib still stood against the far wall, untouched, preserved like a shrine to a grief that had calcified into silence. His face was turned toward the window where the last light pooled on the wooden floor. Rowan stepped inside without knocking. Her footsteps made no sound on the carpet. "You opened it," she said. Nicholas turned, the giraffe still in his hands. His eyes, dark and weathered like stone, met hers. "You showed me that holding on to ghosts doesn't honor them. It just keeps you haunted." He looked back at the crib. "For 10 years, I could not let him go because letting go felt like betraying him. Like saying his life didn't matter. But you walked into my restaurant soaking wet and bleeding, and you did not hesitate. You did not wait for permission to matter." Rowan sat on the edge of the rocker. The wood creaked beneath her weight. They sat together for an hour without speaking much, just the sound of the house settling around them, the radiator ticking as it warmed, and sometimes the distant murmur of the city outside. She told him about her mother, who had left when Rowan was 7, and how she had spent years believing that abandonment meant she was unlovable. He told her about Noah, who would have been 16 now, and how the doctors said there was nothing they could have done, but he had never quite believed them. That night outside the restaurant, Nicholas said finally, "I watched you risk everything for a stranger. A teenager you had never met. You stood in front of him like a blade wrapped in ice, steady and sharp and completely terrified. I haven't felt anything in 10 years. Not since Noah. But watching you, I felt everything all at once, like my heart was remembering how to beat." Rowan reached out and took the giraffe from his hands. She turned it over, examining the worn seams, the places where the button eyes had been sewn back on multiple times. "You gave me my life back," she said quietly. "No," Nicholas replied. "You rebuilt your life. I just removed obstacles. There's a difference. The difference is yours." Rowan set the giraffe gently on the rocking chair between them. She turned to face him completely. "And what do you want from me?" Nicholas looked at her for a long moment. His jaw tightened. His hands opened and closed. "I want you to stay. Not as an employee. Not out of gratitude or debt or the kind of obligation that destroys both people slowly. I want you to stay because you choose to. Because on any given morning, you wake up and you decide to be here. That's what I want." She could have asked him what he would do if she said no. She could have tested the weight of that question. But she saw something in his face that told her he had already answered it internally, that if she chose to leave, he would let her go without fighting, because her freedom mattered more than his heart. That kind of love, the kind that doesn't demand itself, was something she had never known. "I choose to be here," Rowan said. She reached for his hand. Her fingers, no longer trembling, found his. "I choose you." The spring that followed moved like a slow thaw, each day slightly warmer than the last. Dinners in the dining room where candlelight caught in her hair and Nicholas watched her with an intensity that made his lieutenants exchange knowing glances. Walks through the estate gardens as magnolias bloomed white and pink, their perfume hanging in the air like a prayer. Conversations that lasted until the sun rose, the two of them sitting on the terrace with coffee growing cold in their hands while they spoke about loss and survival and the difference between being broken and being shattered. She finished her degree in the spring. She sat in the auditorium in a blue cap and gown, and when her name was called, she walked across the stage and felt something unlock in her chest, a knowledge that she had done this, that she had earned this, that no one could take it from her. Nicholas sat in the third row, flanked by Carlo and Enzo, and when she accepted her diploma, he was the first to stand. His men rose with him. The applause around them seemed to matter less than his face, which held something like pride and something like love, and possibly something like redemption. She met his family on a Sunday in May. His sister Francesca came with her 2 teenagers, skeptical and protective, ready to defend him from the girl who had arrived in his life like an unexpected storm. But Rowan sat at the table and listened more than she spoke, and she asked questions about their lives with a genuine curiosity that seemed to disarm them. By the time dessert came, a tiramisu that Carlo had brought from an Italian bakery in the North End, even Francesca was smiling. That night, Enzo told Carlo, "I didn't think the boss remembered how to laugh like that." Carlo nodded, watching from across the kitchen as Nicholas helped Rowan clear dishes, their hands briefly touching as they moved past each other. "In 15 years, I have never seen him like this. Like he's becoming human again." 6 months after the raids, on a night when frost decorated the windows like broken glass and stars hung sharp as diamonds above Boston, Rowan stood in the grand foyer of the Moretti mansion. The woman who had arrived there soaking wet and invisible was no longer visible at all, but not because she had disappeared. She was visible now, solid, real, whole. She wore a simple blue dress that cost nothing compared to the clothes hanging in the mansion's closets, but it hung on her like confidence, like she had finally learned to take up space. Her degree hung framed in the study downstairs, along with a photograph of her at graduation, sunlight on her face, her smile radiant. She worked now as a consultant for Moretti Enterprises, helping to transform the legitimate business holdings, the restaurants, the shipping company, the real estate portfolio, into something that didn't require looking over one's shoulder. She volunteered 3 nights a week at the women's shelter downtown, the same shelter that had given her a cot and a hot meal when Douglas Hale had finally cornered her outside her apartment and she had finally run. The debt collector's letter with its red-stamped final notice was framed on her desk beside her degree, not as a reminder of despair, but as a map of how far she had traveled. Nicholas was waiting in Bellanot's private booth, the one where his path and hers had first crossed in the shadows. He stood when she entered, and the gesture was old-fashioned, courteous, the kind of thing a man does when he is truly seeing someone. He held her hand across the table, the booth around them private and warm with candlelight. "Do you remember the first time I saw you?" he asked. "You were walking past this booth in the rain. You were soaking wet, exhausted, invisible, or you believed you were. But I saw you. I watched you pretend not to see the 3 men in suits, and I realized that courage isn't about feeling unafraid. It's about moving forward even when you're terrified." Rowan squeezed his hand. "I remember thinking this place was another world. That people like me didn't belong here. That I would never belong anywhere." "You were wrong," Nicholas said simply. "You belong exactly here." They had turned Noah's nursery into a library. Thousands of books now lined the walls where the crib had stood, a monument not to death but to life, to stories, to the possibility of escape through pages and words. Sometimes Rowan sat there and read, and Nicholas would find her hours later still turning pages, lost in worlds that weren't her own, rebuilding herself book by book. Douglas Hale was in federal prison, his appeals denied, his sentence 40 years stretching ahead of him like a corridor with no exit. Cordelia Blackwood was serving 8 years for embezzlement and fraud, her name no longer whispered in Boston society but laughed at, dismissed, forgotten, which was perhaps a crueler fate than she deserved. Rowan reached across the table and touched Nicholas's face. The scar that ran from his eye to his cheekbone was familiar to her now, a geography she had learned to navigate. "What changed?" she asked. "When did you decide to let the door open?" "I didn't decide," Nicholas said. "You decided for me. You stood between a stranger and violence, and you made me remember that there is more to power than control. That sometimes the strongest thing you can do is choose to be vulnerable." The frost on the windows began to melt as they talked, the warmth inside spreading outward like a blessing. "And sometimes miracles come from the most unexpected places," Rowan whispered, almost to herself. Nicholas leaned forward. "What did you say?" She smiled. "Nothing. Everything. I said yes to you. I keep saying yes." He stood then and pulled her up with him, and the kiss that followed was gentle, careful, the kind of kiss that understands that some things are sacred. Around them, the city of Boston hummed with its ordinary life, people struggling, people surviving, people hoping. But in that booth, in that moment, 2 broken people had chosen to be healed together. If this story moved you, if Rowan's courage spoke to something inside you, if Nicholas's capacity to love after so much loss resonates with your own journey, then hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to know that after the rain, the sky clears. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications, because we post stories like this every single day, stories about ordinary people finding extraordinary strength. Drop a comment below and tell us what you felt. What moment shattered your heart? What moment made you believe again? Every comment you leave is a source of motivation that helps us continue creating these stories for you. And remember, you are stronger than you know. You are worthy of being seen, not just looked at. You deserve someone who chooses you every single day, without conditions, without hesitation. We will see you in the next one.